Hello, this is Dr. Mike. This is for my CIS 2642 pen test class, and this is a look at Topic 7, which is sort of the second half of vulnerability analysis. And I have a lot of tabs up, but it's probably pretty quick. A lot of the stuff I've already talked about in the previous videos was you're already going to be looking at this stuff already, probably during your vulnerability scan or even recon. That's again, I know I go back to this a lot. Because of this process here, it's not like you're really going to run recon and then do vulnerability scan and then try to exploit everything you find and then send that to any eluding and then of course to report. It's never like this. As again, you can see here, you're constantly going back to recon. Because of that chaos that's inherent with this whole process, this will be pretty quick. But the chapter itself, is chapter 5 in our textbook, which at the time of this recording is, of course, our CompTIA Pentest Plus, and it's analyzing vulnerability scans. So we came off chapter 4 where we actually talked about scanning. I do want to add one thing in there I may not have talked about, and that is, of course, the tools you're going to use here. Don't forget, we looked a bit about Metasploit, and I think I demoed it where you can actually do a scanner with Metasploit. You can import stuff into Metasploit framework, and you can actually run scans. Now, there's not a lot, but there is some fancy things you can do here in Expose, but this is Rapid7. I think this might be a paid-for tool, but the WMAP Web Scanner, so on. So there are some options here. I'm not going to go through all these. I think I showed you before. Search for auxiliary tools, scanners. There's a lot of them. And so just keep that in mind, Metasploit. And then the output from it might just be local. It could be in the terminal. It might actually produce an output report. And that's an important thing here is this. Let's look at the process here. Yes, I have more whiteboard for you. Again, we have our tools. Nmap. The Nmap itself has the CV scan. So with the Nmap scan engine, that burp and zap. So the same burp pro is probably going to have what you need. Standard burp might not give you any results. You can use burp though to help validate. So both together work great. Metasploit framework. NICTO, which I'll show you here in a second, is going to do great for web-based testing. OpenVAS and Nessus, these are both at the same. Everything's going to be put to your notes. This output could be PDFs, it could be HTML, it could be copy-paste text from a screen. And you want to take those notes and you're going to bounce that off of these sources. We want to look at CVE data, CVSS data, ExploitDB, and the web. I say the web, Google that version maybe, VSFTP version 1.2.3, vulnerabilities. You might find manufacturer, or the people who write the code. So the actual shops who write the code or maintain the apps, they might have a page about the exploit. So, example, WordPress will say, "Hey, we have a current update. The update covers these things." You can this is valuable information because you don't have to restate this stuff again in your report. OWASP. I'll talk about OWASP here in a second. A lot of stuff's going to be not really related to, especially when you get to web and OWASP, not really related to the actual exploit, but to the best practice. And this is going to go back into your report, which can help you validate some of these reports and update your notes. And also maybe go back and you might need to do some retesting. It could be a deeper dive scan with NICTO or maybe with Metasploit, like I demoed before. So this process here is great. And the idea is you can actually start building a report early with some of these outputs. Copy and paste the critical stuff maybe from your Burp Suite report. Paste that. So we'll look at some information here a little bit. So again, the chapter itself, again, I'm not going to go through the whole chapter here. It has some reviewing initial interpreting scan results. Again, I'm not going to go through this, but understand CVSS. We really talked about this already. So let's go and move on and just look at what the slide deck is for this chapter. Here's what you need to do during this process. You need to weed out the false positives. Pretty important. Expectations that are documented and informational results. There's going to be a lot of noise in this process. a lot of info level, a lot of uncertainty in the certainty factor. Like burp will have a certainty level. If I could look at a burp report here, it's certain, firm, or tentative. So this is a sample burp report. This is from their website. So definitely the high and medium are the ones I will want to bring up. Maybe to an executive summary. So I'm going to start building that early. Could be just a copy and paste into maybe Google Suite, a Google Doc, Word doc, whatever I need to use to produce an output for my client. And this informational stuff, especially tentative, I'm definitely going to just maybe push this to a separate report, maybe the low informational to report number 2. As you can do this in Burp. I showed you before you can actually select certain things. So not just have one huge report, here's everything I found. It's more like, here's the really certain high things. These 6 high vulnerabilities right here. Those are going to be something I want to start getting in my notes right away. SQL injection, for example. And I have, right here, copy and paste this. This is great. I might go back later and maybe edit this, but I've already built my report from a rough notes almost. And there's nothing wrong with that, having stuff in your report early. It's going to help with the report generation later on. So again, when we look at those results here, false positives, informational results, and we don't reconcile with other data. This is what we're doing with that part here. CVE, CVSS, we're going to reconcile this. We're going to look at the burp results. It's possible it could be a false positive. And mark those as such. We don't want to come across with too many unsure things. So trend analysis, that's vulnerability trends. Going to move past this. There we go. So the report you might get, this is an example report. I think this is a Nessus report. This is fantastic. Nessus makes great reports. I'll put it, and that's wrong with using this. In fact, here's your information. You can copy and paste this into your summary. And it's going to depend upon what the documentation expectations are. Hopefully at the beginning of it, they'll say, we want a full report, we want a summary report. You keep all just let us know, the critical stuff. No sense in making a huge report if all they want is just the high and critical, whatever those high things. So again, understanding your vulnerabilities, buffer overflows, privilege escalation, code execution, insecure protocols, debugging mode, and so on. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the slide deck here. Virtualization that you really don't run too much into. If the OS detection detects virtualization and there's a possible vulnerability, and there are some vulnerabilities with OS, it's possible you want to communicate that. And symbols, of course, are VM escapes. And of course, maybe the access to the interface, things like that. SQL injection, probably the big one, injection vulnerabilities and cross-edge scripting. These are web-based pen testing. Those are the two, if you find you want to get samples of that. So close that for now. So where can we look for this? So don't forget here, the pen testing execution standard has a section on vulnerability testing. It talks about like OpenVAS, and they have like, I know it's a screenshot here, which is really weird. It takes you to a screenshot. Not sure why they don't have it embedded. But you can get some ideas about maybe what kind of tools you should be running. You might go back and say, I ran some tools. I realized there's 2 other tools I could use. Now be careful. You can get into tool overload. Think about your timeline. Think about your scope. And think about if the tool you kick off, maybe you go get Nexpose here, and we're going to run it, and it's going to take 12 hours to run. It might not be worth it. So, or run overnight if you can, or as long as you're not in the rules of engagement, So yeah, you can't run into too many tools, but you can use this to get an idea for tools. The Kali Linux Revealed, which is this textbook I give to my students in the shell. You can find it for free. It's called Kali Linux Revealed. It's a great textbook. It goes into literally using Linux, fundamentals, installing Kali, which you don't need to do too much if you're using VM, how to configure it, monitoring it, package management. It really is. It's a great book for just the admin side, but there is a section on vulnerability assessment, and of course, compliance pen testing. They have a little write-up here about it, things you gotta look for, operating system version and patch levels. Those are 2 big ones. Even Nmap early recon might determine, if you're out of patch. And again, it's easy to go back the patches is, you know, two patches behind. Go to WordPress and say, look, exactly, they already have it itemized. Here's what the next two patches or the patches you're missing. Here's what they cover. So you don't have to do a lot of digging work. Someone's already done it for you. And then of course we have these true positives, positive results, false positives. These are the ones that are going to be tough, especially if you're iffy about them. If you still always document and report what you document as false positive. False negatives are tough. Those ones you're going to grind a lot of time on. You think there's actually something there, but it's not. Or you miss it. That's the worst one. And that's what you have to come into. Of course, negative results, there's nothing there. So this is a little write-up here. It goes in the same stuff. CV number, CVSS scores, the vendor, that was the name I was looking for. The vendor. And the thing you might look at is some tools will have high, medium, low. Some will have critical, medium, low. You might have some weird mapping here. So that's a great thing to look at, Kali revealed. Again, our burp scanner result here. This is great. I've created several reports. I've created a high-only report. And it's a lot smaller. And it comes across in HTML format, which is great. You can dump it to PDF. You can copy and paste this stuff. I mean, this table here, you can copy and paste it into your report, into Word, or take a screenshot of it. So, great utility here. Burp Suite is fantastic. Can't say enough for it. And it's not just for web-based, too. It can be used for mobile in some aspects. In any case, that's a sample report from Burp, so you can draw stuff from that. Let me go back here again here. And again, if we go down here, you can see the requests. You can see there we go. Vulnerability classification. So in the high level here, issue background, this is good stuff right here. This is great report and notes stuff. Because maybe you're not sure what SQL injection is. It's probably not the case, but maybe it's a more obscure one. And you can have that copy and paste into your notes or put it into your report. And then again here, there's links here to best practices. Testing forum, web, cheat sheets. These are fantastic. These cheat sheets are great. These are what you give to developers. And I can't say enough for this here. OWASP top 10 injection, for example. And there is links down here, prevention cheat sheets. Again, you're giving more than I found something. It's like I found something, and here's how you can fix it. It's going to make you a really, really effective pen tester. So, a few things, of course, is something called the CyBOK. It's the cybersecurity body of knowledge. There's a knowledge base, version 1.1 out. You can go into this, and you can find stuff about. It's something you can read over. Maybe you might open up some ideas that you didn't think about. Like if you're looking at software security, maybe doing mobile and web. Your approaches and concepts. Sandboxing, permission dialog, HTTPS, PKIs. So this might give some ideas of things you might be able to look for. Authentication, cookies, for example. Maybe you look at cookies. This might have some information on cookies. Always good to look at it. It is, the body of knowledge, software, and so on. So again, this is just a good examples. I think this is linked in my Shell learning activities. I think also, besides OWASP being a good place for the top 10, which I can't say enough for, you have this actually great OWASP testing guide. So we have the contents here, threat modeling. So it depends where you are. You might have an engagement where you're down here during development. This might change how you look at stuff. You might be doing more code validation, things like that. But there's a section here on the Web Security Testing Guide. Let's go back here. Where we look at, of course, pen testing, threat modeling. This is sort of an introduction. If you're doing after development, here you go. Reconnaissance, information, management testing. So, look, testing methods. Here we go. Test file permissions, subdomain takeovers. This might open up things. Testing cloud storage. Here we go. How to test cloud storage. Look at that. Actual stuff you could put into your thing and run and test. Can I grab more than I should from a cloud application? Testing standards. So there's some great things here you can use to go back and just maybe show up your vulnerability analysis. And again, this is going to be where during this phase here, you say, you know what, I could do something else here. During my notes phase here, I'm going to drop in, I'm going to do some validation. I must, again, everything goes in my notes, but I find that there might be another tool I can come back into and run. So maybe, and the most tool maybe is Nicto. Let's say I didn't realize I can run Nicto against the website. Maybe you get that from the SciBoc, maybe you get it from a testing guide. But for example, again, I might go use Nicto. Nicto is a great tool, and so example, you might get different outputs. And this is actually from one of the labs. You actually run this during the class lab. You do Nicto plugins test. Nicto has its own website. I'm not going to go into the details, but you can see here, you can copy and paste this. And it's going to just text output, but it'll tell you, hey, there's my PHP admin. It's just sitting out there open, or things like that. Bash history. There's a README here found, so on. And you can also do an output HTML. So there we go. So if you want to do a more formal, most times actually I run Nicto in the command line like this. I just copy and paste this into my notes. I use this as that secondary source sometimes. If Burp found it, did Nicto find it? Or did OpenVest find it, did Nicto find it? And vice versa. So it found CGI bin directory, for example. So again, you can see there's a sample report you open up. That's going back to Zap now. So sample report right here. It looks like this. It's pretty bare. Nothing too exciting, but maybe you want a more formal report. You can dump this to PDF, and then you have a little more easier read than just a text output. But you like the same here. We actually have links. Robots.txt return so-and-so. If it found robots.txt, PHP session ID without HP only flag. So you're going to see a lot of the same results reflected in both. Anyways, that's really it for vulnerability analysis 2. Again, it's going to be a process. It starts really early. I can't say enough. It does. It starts early on. It starts back with recon. Recon and vulnerability scanning and vulnerability analysis. There's a lot of overlap. There's probably more than that. And you're going to be doing this constantly, going back and forth. So it's never a straight process. And it's fine. It's okay that it's not fluid. It's going to be very chaotic at times. And as you start with maybe a set of tools you're used to using, you might bring a new tool in, get those reports. You might decide not to run certain tools due to time constraints. Maybe you're going to run Nessus, but you look at the Nessus plugins and it's going to take too long, or it goes out of scope, things like that. So don't be afraid to go back and reevaluate your vulnerability scanning analysis during vulnerability analysis. So anyways, that wraps up vulnerability analysis 2 from chapter 5 from the textbook. Hope this is helpful. Thanks a lot.